What happens when the man who built an empire on fame, fortune, and fear finally runs out of places to hide? How does a cultural icon go from mogul to monster in the eyes of the very people who once worshipped him? And what if the signs were always there, hidden in plain sight, ignored because the beat was just too good to turn off? This isn't just a scandal, it's a slow-motion implosion of a legacy once thought untouchable. With testimonies that read like psychological thrillers and evidence that sounds too dark to be true, the fall of Sean Diddy Combs isn't just shocking, it's historic. Stick around because by the end of this story, you won't just be asking how it happened. You'll be asking who knew, who's next, and how deep this really goes. A monument to denial, carved from pure ego and dipped in delusion. Not a tear, not a twitch, not even the courtesy of pretending to be human. Just stone-cold silence, as if he'd spent his whole life rehearsing that exact moment. And when the judge dropped the 160-year hammer like it was just another Tuesday, you could practically hear the collective gasp of a room realizing that yes, even the untouchable can, in fact, be touched. No one dared move. Not the press with their pens frozen mid-scribble, not the spectators holding their breath like extras in a courtroom drama, and definitely not his army of Gucci-clad lawyers, who now looked less like legal eagles and more like interns caught forging signatures. It was done. Sean Diddy Combs, once the living embodiment of champagne-soaked success, was now inmate number whatever. And let's be clear, this wasn't your garden-variety celebrity meltdown. This was the apocalypse people had been tiptoeing around for years, whispering in backstage corners and sloshing over overpriced cocktails, always with one eye on the exit. Because talking about Diddy was like lighting a match in a room full of gas leaks. The rumors? Radioactive? The truth? Apparently, even more so. Now, all that hush-hush had turned into evidence with teeth. Testimonies, exhibits, and federal charges that didn't just tarnish his brand, they blew it into unrecognizable pieces. Oh, and let's not insult this with talk of minor missteps or celebrity arrogance. This was about domination. Years of it. A whole ecosystem allegedly built to orbit one man's whims, where loyalty was demanded, fear was currency, and everyone else played supporting roles in the gospel according to Diddy. You didn't just know him, you were owned by him. This was no scandal, it was an empire of manipulation. A reality show where silence was golden, and anyone who spoke out risked becoming a cautionary tale. The prosecution didn't describe a troubled star. They sketched a villain, one who wielded wealth like a loaded gun, turned luxury suites into crime scenes, people into puppets, and relationships into negotiation chips. And then there was the baby oil, because of course there was. Oh, it wasn't just salacious, it was practically ceremonial. That baby oil? Not just some freaky detail. It was the totem, the recurring artifact in a twisted performance art piece that prosecutors called a pattern. Ritualistic, humiliating, and, in the end, the very thing that helped rip the designer mask off the mogul and expose the man underneath. But the real plot twist? It wasn't just the exhibits or the surveillance footage or the $10,000 hotel bills. It was the people, the ones who finally stopped whispering. Enter Cassie Ventura, formerly the silent fixture at the edge of Diddy's spotlight, now the woman who may very well have helped drop the curtain on the whole spectacle. How did she show up? Oh, just 9 months pregnant, glowing with calm, and carrying more emotional payload than a courtroom could legally handle. Her testimony wasn't just impactful, it was surgical. 4 days of walking the jury through Diddy's world like she was giving a VIP tour of hell's penthouse suite. And you could feel the temperature change. The jury leaned in like binge watchers on the final episode, while the defense team shifted in their seats like their expensive suits had suddenly shrunk. Her words didn't just sting, they detonated. And whether you call it courage, closure, or cold-blooded chess, she came with documentation and devastation. Some whisper she cut a deal. Others call it a power play. Either way, she walked out of that courtroom, and something inside him clearly stayed behind. People close to him said he was never the same after her lawsuit. The bravado started to flicker. He got twitchy, started disappearing on people, ghosting calls, dodging events like subpoenas were falling from the sky. Like he knew, finally knew, that the empire wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. And the fall? Inevitable. And oh no, the betrayal didn't stop with Cassie. That was just the prologue. Behind the velvet ropes and champagne-soaked selfies, his own inner circle, yes, the same people who used to light his cigars and clean up his messes, started humming a very different tune. Not to TMZ, mind you, but straight to the feds. Quietly, legally, strategically, the assistants, the drivers, the managers, basically the stage crew behind the Diddy show, began flipping scripts, feeding investigators a breadcrumb trail that led straight into the heart of his carefully guarded empire. And let's be clear, this wasn't some vengeance tour. This was pure, uncut self-preservation. Subpoenas were flying like confetti at one of his old parties, and nobody wanted to be the last one holding the NDA. Even the industry, oh, the same one that once couldn't wait to orbit Planet Diddy, suddenly developed a case of selective amnesia. No tweets, no impassioned think pieces. Just a few wannabe TikTok celebrities playing fashion blogger outside the courthouse, while Grammy winners and brand partners vanished faster than his publicist's will to live. And can you blame them? The name Diddy had become less a brand and more a biohazard. Because underneath this wasn't just a fall from grace, it was a crack in the foundation of an entire era. One built on silence, power, and the delusion that fame equals immunity. But spoiler alert, it doesn't. The judge didn't sugarcoat a single syllable. He called Diddy a danger to society. Not in the abstract, poetic, tortured artist way. No, in the methodical, manipulate and destroy lives way. The kind of threat that doesn't just happen, it's engineered. And while the charges on paper may have read like boring legalese, transport violations, coercion, the real gravity was moral, symbolic, a declaration in bold block letters. Influence is not innocence. And yet, somehow, this still feels like the prelude, because the trial, just the start. What's next is a tsunami of civil suits, more than 60 and counting, from people who say they were groomed, exploited, and thrown away like extras in a movie he thought he'd be directing forever. Some of them were kids. And this time, no amount of celebrity, money, or nostalgia is going to be enough to unring that bell. The stories don't just line up, they echo like a broken record stuck on a sinister loop. Same scenes, same props, same twisted choreography. And at this point, it's not a matter of if the House of Cards collapses, it's how many floors it has and who else was living rent-free inside it. In the court of public opinion, where a trending hashtag can outweigh 1,000 depositions, the conversation isn't dying down, it's catching fire. Activists want investigations, artists are executing quiet unfollows like surgical strikes. Lawyers, they're sharpening their knives. And fans, well, they're split. Some still clutching their nostalgia like a vintage vinyl, others saying, finally! Because let's be real, the red flags weren't subtle, they were neon, flashing. But people just turned the volume up, drowned it all out, and called it genius. And yet, for all the horror and spectacle, one detail still lingers like smoke in a burned-out room. The baby oil, not because of what it is, but because of what it means. This one absurdly mundane object, turning up everywhere. Hotel rooms, testimonies, photos, like some cursed prop in a nightmare production that never stopped filming. It wasn't about pleasure, it was about power, ritual, control. The repetition was the point. And when the feds found entire cabinets of it, unused, unopened, stocked like ammunition, it screamed what the Billboard charts never could. So, where does it end? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is chapter 1 of something much bigger. A reckoning not just for Diddy, but for the system that crowned him. The machine that dressed up abuse in designer labels and called it culture. That turned wealth into a silencer and fame into a shield. But shields crack, and empires, they always fall. This one didn't go out in a blaze of glory. It ended with a gavel, cold and final. And that one question, who's next, isn't just gossip blog bait anymore. It's ricocheting through green rooms, whispering down power corridors in Beverly Hills, and making execs sweat through their tailored suits from Miami to Malibu. Because Diddy may be the headline, but he was never the whole story.